Ayo, what's outside is within. The mind regulates the hand that masters the pen. The pen is mightier than the sword, but the tongue is mightier still. The stargate to the mind's revealed. The vortex.
Peace, everybody. Cyclone is here, your host. This is Real Talk with Kevin. Today's topic is about depression. As always, I like to just put them in subject headlines, headings. So this first subheading is understanding depression. And the first question is, what are some common signs of depression that people often overlook or mistake for something else?
Yeah, so some things can be disguised easily, depending on what people are saying to you. So you might be unhappy a lot of the time. You might be sleeping badly. It might seem like insomnia. You might be sleeping all the time. There's quite that state of unhappiness, the sleeping, just a real general state of a lull, a lowness. And people often mask it up anyway to their friends. So sometimes you wouldn't even know. If someone's in bed all the time, they might excuse it. I've been feeling tired, I've been exhausted, but it's the depression sort of flowing through them. Yeah. So there's quite a few different symptoms that you might not identify, or people will cover up the symptoms by telling you something else is going on. I've been working too hard.
Can you explain the difference between sadness and clinical depression?
So it's quite strange to differentiate between both, because you could have clinical depression, but what would also fall in that realm, that clinical realm, is sort of melancholia, being that melancholy sort of state where you're feeling sadness, but more of an unconscious process, because the sadness, just like you going to bed and getting up in the morning, you went to bed nice, and then you get up in the morning feeling upset, and you don't know why. But if that persists consistently, you might be going through that melancholic state, but that'll also be clinical. But you could have a state of sadness that's not so debilitating that's affecting your everyday life. When the clinical depression kicks in, you can't function properly. So when it at its extreme, a long time ago, that depression would be looked upon differently, maybe as hysteria or something else. And drugs wasn't at the forefront so much. Over the years, drugs have been pushed to the forefront of dealing with depression. So when it comes to that constant depressive state over time, and it's affecting your daily functioning, you might get diagnosed, and then you're on medication, and then you see the real clinical sort of experience happening to an individual.
How does depression manifest differently in men compared to women?
I remember you asked me you asked me a question like that.
Something similar, isn't it?
About women and men. I always tread carefully when it comes to making a distinction between women's experiences and men's experiences. And maybe I've said that to you before. It'd probably be better to get a woman in, because there's physiologically we function different, and our experiences as men are completely different to women. So I think a woman's, it's like this: we don't get periods, so we don't understand the sort of sadness and upsetness and the feelings that come with that, or with menopause or whatever else, those states that women have to deal with. So I wouldn't like to make a distinction unless there was a woman sitting there and she was talking about
to give her 2 pence. I get you
in regards to that.
I hear you. Is it possible for someone to be depressed and not even know it?
Yeah, of course. That's like I was talking about that melancholia. So you could go through that state, and it is in that clinical realm where you're just feeling sad for no reason. And again, that's where enters that realm of unconsciousness, because it's not something conscious that's happened to you that's made you feel that way. There's something going on unconsciously that's flowing through you, that's making you feel upset, and you don't know why. I mean, like I said earlier, you could get up, you go to bed in the night, get up in the morning, you're feeling upset. But imagine you're experiencing that every day, and you don't know what's going on. Why am I feeling down? Why am I feeling lonely? Why am I feeling upset? Why am I feeling sad? So yeah, that can happen easily. But for a lot of people, it happens maybe once a week, once a month, or whatever. Yeah, and it's nothing, you sort of shrug it off. But once that's happening consistently and you can't function, you know you're in that state where maybe you might need to seek some help.
I want to go into like the next subheading, which is root causes and triggers. And the first question is, what are some of the root causes of depression in today's society?
I mean, there's a sort of distinction made. Early studies and theoretical investigations looked at it in a way of it being sort of biochemical and stuff going on in the brain. But I think over time, especially in the sort of the market economy we exist in, societal issues and factors have come into play, and people have started looking at, you know, lack of money having an impact on your depression. I mean, even basic things like if you're unemployed, or you've just become unemployed, and you're at the hands of the benefit system, going from a well-paid job to a situation where you're at the hands of the benefit system and they're talking to you in a condescending manner. You're getting paid low money every 2 weeks or every month. You're on universal credit, you're on JSA or whatever other benefits. And you've gone from living in existence like that, and it might only be a stopgap. You might have decided to set up your own business and you needed some support during a time where it's a transitionary stage for you to you know, you start up your business and become sort of successful. But you need the benefit system to support you for a little while. Even that in society, and being at the hands of having to look at emails for your universal credit, or go down to the job centre and sign on and wait, and people talk to you a certain way, that can induce something in you. So social pressures generally, whether it's in relationships, whether it's in your workplace, can have a detrimental effect outside on you as a person, outside of the biochemical workings that are going on in your head, that might lead to the onset of some sort of depression.
How does poverty, racism, and systemic oppression contribute to the depression in marginalized communities?
Oh my God, I really don't know how. I think it's really about your level of awareness. If there's a naivety about you and a lack of awareness, I think it'll be in regards to systemic, institutional prejudice, racism, whether it's weaponization, whether it's infantilization, whether it's adultification, whatever your experience as a minoritized group. If you're not aware of those things, it's easier to navigate through your social world without these pressures, because you're not aware of them. When you're aware that these things are going on, that's when the pressures build up. I mean, COVID was one of the things that showed you how susceptible we are to becoming physically sick and possibly mentally ill or depressed as a consequence of a build-up of all the things, all the social factors, or the social ills that we have to endure. So if you are aware of interactions where someone has talked in a certain way and you identify that as a microaggression, already that's something. Then you walk down the road and you experience some racism. Then you go into a workplace and then you've got to code switch. And then you get stopped by the police, and it seems like this might be a situation where I might end up in prison. Or you're physically attacked on the street by a racist, you know, or you're just dealing with transgenerational trauma and you're hyper vigilant in a lot of situations.
Yeah.
And people don't understand that transgenerational trauma, one element of it is even related to me talking to my son and my daughter about their interactions with the police. If I'm telling you how to interact on the street or how to interact in institutions like school, I'm traumatized, and I'm projecting part of that trauma into you because I want you to be safe. So a lot of the time there's a collective amount of different social ills that you have to manage inside of you. And evidently there's a lot of black men in mental institutions.
That's right.
You know, a lot of black people, but a lot of black men. So social ills, and all the ones that I've named, managing yourself and having the coping mechanisms to manage yourself in society, you're doing well if you're not suffering from depression. I think some people take our experiences as a joke, and it's not taken seriously when you talk about what's going on around you and how it's having an impact on you on a daily basis.
Can depression be inherited, or is it more about environment and experiences?
Yeah, I think, you know, there's always the nature-nurture debate. You know, and for me, I think it's a mixture of both. Whether it's genetics, biochemical brain makeup, and what's going on there, or societal experiences, or a merging of both. So I say you're susceptible to that because your mum suffers from depression and your dad suffers from depression. And you come from a low income household, and you're suffering in poverty at the moment as a 25-year-old, 30-year-old, but already genetically there's been some genetic transmission in regards to depression. So you already got that going on, sorry, and then you've also got the societal factors pressurizing you.
How do childhood experiences and trauma factor into adult depression?
Man, I mean, working with children for over 20 years and observing what they've gone through, especially when, you know, you're faced with traumatic events. You know, your childhood, it's like you've got a little piece of clay, and you want to mold it into something nice. Now, when you're molding it into something nice, and then someone starts cutting out pieces of the clay and destroying the clay, what the end product doesn't look very nice. And that's what happens, but it's an internal not very nice. So people abuse you and treat you a certain way, and on the surface you can't really tell what's going on, but inside it's horrible. And it's funny because there's Gabor Mate, he's a expert on trauma, and he talks about attachment, and he talks about your endorphin system, how it's connected to attachment and authenticity, but more so when I'm thinking about it in regards to attachment. So I'm attached to my mum, but if there was a lack of attachment with me and my mum, my endorphin system isn't working properly. So I'm not getting that high, and that's like your opiate system inside. So what happens when you haven't got that going on? You end up looking for something to give you that high. You know, people move into addiction. So depression, addiction, your endorphin system and attachment, they're all sort of linked. So those things happening early in childhood. If you see, especially with young people that have got attachment issues, they may become addicted, but also may go through this level of depression as well, because they need something to raise them up. They need a hug, but the hug's not come in a physical form. It's come in a form of maybe cannabis or heroin or something else.
That's right, yeah.
You know.
What role does social media play in triggering or worsening depression?
You know, everything's individual. But we know that rates of mental illness amongst young people have gone up significantly. I don't know if there's studies, I haven't looked at them, if there's a correlation between mental health issues in young people and the sort of introduction of social media, but I'm sure there's something going on. I mean, it'll be a good thing for us to look at some point in time, because I feel so, because the pressures are too great to be recognised. Self-esteem for young people back in the day was based on your interactions with your friends and family. Now it's not only based on that, but it's also based on how many people like what you're putting out and your content. So when it's not happening, of course you're going to feel there's going to be, self-esteem's going to be dented. When people are cussing you online. I mean, I really admire to some extent those people that put out a lot of content and do read the comments.
That's right.
Because, you know, those comments can hurt, and you have to manage yourself in a particular way not to fire back on social media and create a situation for yourself. You know, because when they say sticks and stones may break your bones, but words don't hurt you, however the rhyme goes. But to a certain extent, but words can cut hard. You know, they can cut hard, because if you, and let me give you an example. I might have an argument with my missus. My missus will not hit me, hopefully not, yeah? She's a very nice lady. But if she hit me, I'd probably take that better than her saying certain words to me that might make me want to end the relationship. I mean, and no one likes DV in the home. But words can cut deep.
Very deep.
You know, so when you're on social media and people are, it's like there was a thing the kids used to do. I don't know if they still do it. There's a group they used to make and involve everyone. It was like a cussing group. So they'd make a group with loads of people and they'd victimize one person. I forgot what they called it. Now imagine being at the hands of 1,000 children online that are cussing you about your hairdo or your girlfriend or something. And then that's just online. Then you've got to face them face to face.
Yeah.
What happens? And at the same time, you're trying to hide that from your parent or parents.
Yeah.
You know, it gets too complex. And young people haven't got the coping mechanisms to manage that properly. Adults haven't properly, let alone children.
Yeah. I wanted to move into the next subheading, and that's personal impact and relationships. How can depression affect a person's relationship, family, friends, and partners?
You know, the worst thing is, I think, and some people are accepting of it, is a sad, disgruntled partner. When you're around someone, and you know how it is, because there's people around you that project out that energy that you can't be around a lot. When you're around them, it's and you're starting to feel heavy. They've projected that into you. Yeah, you either feel angry, you feel sad. They might come and start talking conspiracy stuff all the time. That you can't manage. It might be a long time friend they've suddenly changed and they talk in a particular way, but it's all too heavy all the time. No one wants that, and a lot of people start distancing themselves from you as a consequence of it. And sometimes because you're in this rut, so to speak, you know, me and my friends, because like I said before, I've had 5 friends that have gone mad, and I always said that the best thing about going mad is that you don't know. That's for you as an individual, but everyone outside of you knows what's going on. So even when you're displaying a certain behavior and people are distancing themselves, you might be questioning yourself and saying, why is this happening? Because you can't see how you're being. You know, so when you're in a state of depression, and if people aren't understanding, if you're not at a state where you can recognize what's happening with you, ask for help. Yeah, and if you're not there and it continues, that's when it's going to become a major problem. People will distance themselves from you. You know, you've got to have some really resilient people around you that really love you to stay on track with you through that journey.
That's real talk, brother. What does it look like when depression is masked by high functioning behavior?
there's usually a crash. You know, there's usually a crash, and as it's really upsetting that you'll get those situations where the suicide note is left and no one expected it.
They didn't see the signs.
Nah, no one saw it. That's all that left. Everyone's saying why. They were so happy, they were so like this, they were so like that, but no one knew. You know, in situations like that, if the person hasn't fulfilled their objective, at least there's still hope, you know, of doing something, because you know that's a crisis point now. Yeah, before that everything seemed all right, but this has happened, then we've got to get involved. But it doesn't always go like that.
That's right. How does untreated depression influence a person's physical health?
Well, whether you stop eating, whether you're overeating, whether you're taking a load of drugs, different types of drugs, whether you're not, did I say sleeping? Whether you're not getting any sleep at all, whether you're sleeping all the time, you know, it's going to have a detrimental effect on you all round, because you're doing things to the extreme. Yeah, you're doing things to the extreme. So, you know, those extreme behaviours what are going to have a significant impact on your organs and your mental well-being generally.
Yeah. What's the link between depression and addiction or substance abuse?
So again, that depression, I think, you know, a lot of it's to do, some of it's to do with that endorphin system. You know, you need to feel a high, natural high. When you're not feeling that and getting that, what's going to happen? You're going to have to get it from somewhere.
Yeah.
You know, and a lot of times that would have manifested in the early stages when with the lack of attachment in some families, and then later on seeking for that endorphin rush, that the natural opiate sort of rush that you get, you're not getting. You need to go and get it from somewhere. And, you know, and it doesn't help that for young people, especially in today's society, you might have those feelings, but you might not readily move in a direction of drugs. But nowadays, we're living in such a drug-fueled society with young people, you know, experimenting with all kinds of different drugs. They're really easily available, and people offer them to you.
Yeah.
So it doesn't take much nowadays to feel a certain way, and then be offered something, even when you didn't even think about it. And then you start feeling okay. And then in some circumstances, the person that gave it to you ends up being all right. And then you see years later, that person that was given it, they're in a mental institution or on the streets.
Sure. Can someone who appears to be the strong one in the family or a group setting still be battling depression?
Yeah. Battling it. Some people can actually battle it right on to the end, you know, and be covert with it. No one will know. And some people can battle it for a good while, then they crash, or some people will battle it and then they'll end up in a mental institution, and that sort of revolving door of being in and out and medicated and in and out. Like I said, I've had friends that have been in there. I've had friends that have been at the hands of the mental health institution for 15, 20 years, you know, and only one of my friends have I ever seen come back to a sort of level of normality. You know, but there's loads of people out there that are depressed and people don't know. And they're struggling through as best as they can. And if any of you are out there, talk to someone, you know, and all I can say is try your best to stay away from the medication. If you understand anything, but in the UK, tourism and finance are the two top most profitable industries, and then it's pharmaceuticals. You know, they pump about 7 billion into that. Yeah. What are they looking for? They're not looking for you to go to talking therapies and get better. They're looking you to go on the pills. You know, so please, if you're out there and you're suffering and you're being quiet, Go and talk to someone. Find someone, you know, in some modality, whether it's psychodynamic, CBT, person-centered, whatever it is, and sit down and talk before you start taking the pills. Because it can be a slippery slope for you once you start. And the person that you were, you might not ever be again.
Well, funny that you say that, because the next we're going into the next subheading, which is coping, healing, and treatment. First question is, what are some healthy coping mechanisms people can use during depressive episodes?
I think it is quite, you know, people have routines that may keep them happy, and they suddenly stop them. They stop listening to music, stop going out, maybe stop eating. They used to be, you know, just eat normally. Now they don't eat at all. So again, it's that level of awareness. It's hard to have the drive to pull yourself out of the hole when you're depressed. You know, and I always talk about people around you, because if you're in a particular state, it's like being stuck in a hole. Yeah. If you can't climb out of the hole, you need help. People have to help you out with the ropes or whatever.
Yeah.
So, you know, a lot of the time it's like the people around you have got to be very aware. And also you've got to, especially as, you know, for me, for black men, our ego is so large and so rigid that it's hard to ask for help. And sometimes it's hard receiving help. So you're going to have to take it on the chin and be able to let your ego slide and say, all right, I need some help here, you know. And if someone's offering their help, say, yeah, I'd like the help. You know, it's hard a lot of the time. And I say black men because I understand our nature, but it's all men. Anyone that has a thread of masculinity, their ego, when it comes to receiving help or asking for help, it's a problem.
When should someone seek professional help, and how do they know it's time?
That's an interesting question, because there's a time when people dial a number. I don't know when that time is. Yeah. But there is a time when someone dials a number or asks. And for me, it's usually at a state when you can't deal with what's going on anymore. Whatever's going on for you, you know, it's like the straw that broke the camel's back. So you get to a certain stage, you're dealing with it, and no, I can't deal with this anymore. And like I said, some people, when they get to that stage, they'll pick up the phone and phone someone, whatever, services or whatever. Some people will call friends, some people will call family. Some people on the street might just have an outburst and something may happen, they might get taken in. But to identify when it's actually going to happen in individuals is hard work. It just happens. And that is when you've had enough. You've had enough of this way of being, and I can't function properly like that. And some people, especially with people, it's easily identifiable in people that work. Yeah, because something will be happening in work. You'll be taking mad days off, your boss is seeing something, people in work. But if you're unemployed and there ain't a lot of people around you, you could be in that state and people don't even know that's going on. You know, so yeah. It's not easy. Depression's quite a depressing topic to talk about in itself.
Yeah. You know, I guess because you got to kind of get yourself in that mind frame of, like, you know, going to the branches of, you know, where's it coming from, where it can lead to, and, you know, I get that. But saying that, how can therapy help someone struggling with depression? How can they find a way out through therapy?
You know, there's different states in it. It's like you could be suffering from depression, you could have that melancholia going on where you don't know why you're upset, and then you can have mourning. There's all these different states. So you experience a loss, you're feeling grief, and then you go through the process of mourning. So you got all those states. So you got depression, you got that melancholia, and you'll have mourning. So you might go through a mourning, you have loss, then you have grief, and then you go through this process of mourning. So depending on what you're going in for, you go to a therapist, you're suffering from this unconscious feeling where you don't feel happy, and you know, that melancholic feeling. Now, obviously, when you talk to someone that you know as a friend, you think you can talk to them as a friend, and they be quite open and neutral and transparent. It's not usually like that. People have their opinions. People say you should do this, you should do that, blah, blah, blah. There has to be a real level of transparency or neutrality where people are not involving their biases in the conversation. That doesn't usually happen. So at least when you go to a therapist, you know that's happening, hopefully. I'm hoping that everyone's adhering to the, the rules and the codes and the ethics that are going on as practitioners. So that level of neutrality should enable you to get everything off your chest without any sort of biases and any sort of taking you off in a particular direction. So just getting it out straight away, that will start helping. And just the holding, especially if it's something like bereavement and mourning, some people just need to be held, and then you offload, and then you go through the sort of processes of grief until you get to a level of acceptance. And then, it's like mourning especially, and things like maybe transgenerational trauma to a certain extent, but not so much. But mourning especially, someone dies, bam, it's in you. And then you'll need the work from the therapist or the practitioner for that to start flowing out of you. And even though there's remnants left because of birthday, Christmas, and specific times of the year, it comes back hard. But the majority of it has flowed out of you. And that, for me, is what a lot of therapists can give you. They can help that process where it can flow out of you a bit quicker. It might take 2, 3, 4, 5 years. But the feeling, because a lot of the time with death, you relive stuff a lot of the time, and you hold people with you. So if someone's dying and it was a case where they had a terminal condition, you at the bedside, you go through that, the last conversation, the last dinner you might have had with them or whatever. Then when they are gone, you might sit on the bench and you might talk to them, and you might carry them with you for a good while in everyday life, making decisions based on the decisions they would have made. So there's this real carrying of the dead person with you for a good while. So therapy also helps you with that, and that could be quite a positive thing if it works for you in a particular way. That person that died might have been a great academic and you weren't, and you remember their words, and next minute you're in college and uni and your life has changed. So but I think talking therapy more than anything else can give you a place that feels safe, you feel heard properly without any biases, and you've got a vehicle to offload everything, and it not be pushed back into you. It just goes off, and then that process starts where those feelings start flowing out of you slowly.
What are some alternatives or complements to medication in treating depression?
So, there's all kinds of therapies out there. I know that there's the horse therapy, equine. We used to send kids when they were, for young children, that sort of therapy. Art therapy. People might find acupressure, acupuncture. There's all kinds of different alternatives, herbal remedies. I don't know if Reiki and those deal with certain aspects that help your body and help your mind. So I know there's things out there a lot of things that I haven't even tapped into. And if you do the research and look around for alternatives, you'll find them. But there's loads of things out there, things that I haven't even heard of. But you know, as a therapist and as a person that is very what is the right word? Very skeptical about therapy before I became a therapist. I think for me, being such a skeptic and embracing it in the way I feel I've embraced it, I can be quite a good advocate for talking about therapy, because, you know, especially as a black man, that's something you don't really talk about. Old school black men, therapy, no, you don't have that. But the modern version of me, because I was that guy. I was that young, street-orientated guy that thought that I could handle everything on my own. And even when I started training as a therapist, I thought, well, what's all this? I've got to do therapy once a week. I've got to pay £65. I'm doing it as part of my course. Oh God, I've just got to do it because it's a prerequisite for going through. But once I started going there, I mean, in the early stages of therapy, I was like, all right, what is this? This lady's talking to me, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, I was so skeptical, I didn't even care what therapist I got. You know, some people, they want a black therapist. They're white, they want a white therapist. They're Turkish, they want a Turkish therapist. So my therapist was an older white Jewish lady. That in the end I admired her. Her work with me was very subtle. And there was a few things that I found out about myself that I was pleasantly surprised about. And when I say that, pleasantly surprised, that I didn't even know I felt like that. I didn't even know that might have been going on with me. So, you know, in the long run, in the end of the whole process, I was like, all right, this is some good stuff. I haven't got to be so critical about people that go to therapy like I was. But, I mean, not a lot of people used to go when I was younger, but hearing it, you think, oh, they're mad, what's wrong with them, blah, blah. Therapist, just get on with it, you're too soft. No, I'm not that guy. And I'm not that guy with my children. I'm not that guy with my friends, you know. You have to understand that sometimes it's like this. People will offer you food that you've never tasted. But because the mixture of the ingredients don't seem right, you're already oppositional. No, I'm not eating that. I don't want that. Blah, blah, blah. And then years later, you're given it, and then you really liked it. You could have had that 5 years before. I could have got that treatment before, but I was too ignorant.
That's right.
You know, and too stuck in my ways to have a taste. And that's all people need to do. If you feel like you're in crisis or something's going on, have a taste. And don't have a taste for a week, and think that this therapy is not working. I know people that do that. They'll go to therapy for a real short period. Therapy ain't working. All right. How quick did you expect it to work? Then you've got the other ones that go to therapy. I didn't like the therapist. All right. Try another one. Because they're not all the same.
That's right.
You know, so.
Interesting, because now we're going to move into the last segment of, you know, like sub headings. And I wanted to go a bit more into what you were saying. This one, the subheading is community, culture, and conversation. But this question is, why is there still so much stigma around talking about depression, especially in black and brown communities?
I think we've had such a long history of having, and it's an English phrase, a stiff upper lip. I think we've adhered to especially Caribbean people that came here during 1948 and the Windrush era, you know, even when you had West Indians fighting in the war, there's a message and language that was taught in British society, you know, and even from back in the day, having a stiff upper lip. It seems like that's one thing that black people adhered to. The second is colonial living, living in colonial existence, and having to be strong and take a certain level of brutality, and sort of go on like you're unfazed, you know. We've had to endure a lot, and I think because of the sort of practices of old school parents, they've instilled what their forefathers instilled into them. Shut your mouth, don't moan, don't complain, or you're going to get something. And it sounds like a sort of, it correlates with the slave master on the plantations. Don't moan about working a 12-hour day. Don't moan that I'm raping your wife. Don't moan that I'm abusing your children. Because once you start talking up, you're going to get something. We still exist like that today, you know. So there's been this really deep level of conditioning and reinforcement with black people in regards to getting help in any way. You just shut up and get on with it. My mum done that, you know, whether it was the racism she faced when she was a nurse in these hospitals, and her putting her hand, you know, and my mum's a typically Trinidadian Indian looking woman. But when you're going to help a patient and they're saying, get your N-word hand off me, you know, you take it on the chin. You know, and I think for the longest time, black people have taken it on the chin and don't understand that there's, you don't have to. You know, you can speak out. You can say, I don't like that, I need help, or whatever. You know, I think we've got a culture, and I think it's been broken down. I think the new age of young people, it's like this. There's a you know, young people now, they go out and they go to the restaurant and they go to clubs and they do these sort of, in my day, it'd be looked upon as bougie, but it's the natural existence of young people. But also having a therapist is part of that package now for young people. So I think the landscape's changed in regards to therapy and young black people. You know, I've seen through certain counselling services, young people, even the other day I done an assessment to a young person that come, young black man that's come for counselling. So I think the landscape's changed quite a lot. I think with the older generation, it'll always be that way. You know, it'll be hard. I know an older person that I tried to introduce to therapy. They must have done 3 sessions and they said they're not having it no more.
Yeah, they must be for that,
Yeah.
They don't need it.
Yeah, exactly.
Why do you think men in particular struggle to open up about depression and mental health?
You know, as males, you know, it's funny because when I've sat down and talked with other men about things, I see men like this. Everything that we do on this planet, nearly everything, is for women. To attract them, to impress them, everything we do. So our masculine selves, how we're constructed, is about being physically strong, about being a protector. I mean, that even goes back to prehistoric times, if people believe in prehistoric times, or ancient times. So to be anything less than that is a problem for the individual. You know, some people out there, some men out there have the ability to be open, authentic, and not worry about their ego and that strong masculine feelings of I'm hard, I don't need help, I don't cry. So there are some people out there that can embrace a different way of being, where you're more open. But a lot of men, that masculinity and that ego, and it's like an innate feeling that you have. It's like this is I was talking with my friend the other day. See a man that's injured, he's hurt his hand, he's hurt his leg, and ask him a question about how he feels on the streets when he's walking. He won't, because he feels vulnerable. You know, this level of vulnerable, men don't like feeling vulnerable. They don't like to tell people that they're feeling vulnerable.
That's right.
You know, so masculinity itself is a thing that, if you understand who you are as a man, and how better you can be as a man by not being closed off to help and saying to people, I'm in need here, you know. But you know, masculinity is a hard thing to navigate as a man in a society like this as well, because it's all up in the air. I think nowadays it is, well, I think nowadays for men it's easier to have your emotions on your sleeve. When I was younger, you couldn't have none of those emotions on your sleeve, you know. But still, there's still a stigma attached within certain communities. I've seen it in the Turkish community. A lot of Turkish men, they've got to be hard, they've got to be the provider, they've got to look after their missus on a certain level. And talking out is not the one.
How can we as a community do a better job of supporting those who are silently struggling?
I'm sure there is, and I haven't checked this out, and I know there's lots of organisations. I don't know if there's a lot of grassroots organisations in certain areas that are available. I'm sure they are, but signpost people to places. You know, that's the best thing. I mean, the beauty of nowadays is they've got the internet. You can find whatever you want anywhere. Yeah, if you need help. You know, sometimes people just need prompting or some guidance, but you can get help anywhere nowadays. It's just about you encouraging the person that can't even do that because of their depression.
That's right. Okay, so this is the last question for you. What is your message to someone listening right now who feels that they're at the end of their rope?
Don't be there alone. Don't be there alone, suffering in silence. Understand that even if it's one person, yeah, and you might not, because you're suffering from depression, you might not understand that there's one person. There's one person that cares about you, yeah. Even if there's not many, there's one. Talk to them. You know, use the internet, see what's available. Talk to your friends and family. And if you haven't got much friends and family, like I said, there must be one person. And the only reason there's not one person is because you might be feeling so depressed you think there's no one. But just reach out to someone, ask for help. Don't let your masculinity, if you're a man, get in the way of you being well and being a better version of the self that you're experiencing now. Because you were better, and you know that. That's part of why also you're depressed, because you can't understand who you are now. You know, so reclaim yourself, get some help.
Thank you very much, my brother.
Nice there.
Hey yo, what's outside is within. The mind regulates the hand that masters the pen. The pen is mightier than the sword, but the tongue is mightier still. The stargate to the mind's revealed. The vortex.